Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia. Welcome back to another faction preview video for the Fates Divided DLC, and today we'll be taking a look at Yuan Shao's faction in the 200 start in the new DLC. Now, Yuan Shao is one of the feature faction in this DLC, since it mainly features the Battle of Guandu, where Yuan Shao takes on Cao Cao, and we have a whole bunch of new characters joining Yuan Shao's faction. So there's going to be a lot of things to talk about, and we're going to jump right into it by taking a look at his starting position being rated as easy here. And I think that's true. He's much easier to play compared to Cao Cao, which has a lot more intricate parts going on. And you also have a pretty secure rear compared to Cao Cao, where he has to face enemies on multiple sides. Now, aside from that, his mechanic has got a little bit of a change, but most of it's the same. You still have the lineage resource, which is difficult to gain, but not that difficult, because you still have a passive growth part as long as Yuan Shao is on the field. Now, you have to use lineage to recruit new characters, so that part is rather rough. But because Cao Cao has so many new characters and powerful generals already, you can definitely try to capture them in battle and use them for yourself if you are playing as Yuan Shao. So you don't always have to get characters through recruitment, but sometimes there might be a nice character that shows up and you might want to splurge your lineage to recruit that character. Aside from that, we also have a couple different occupation options where when we take a city, you can have the reinforce and resupply option. Not really recommended because I think it uses lineage. You can also forge alliance from the start. This is still pretty key because you don't actually start out highly ranked in terms of prestige, because you are splitting the north with your sons and your nephew. So being able to make alliances is helpful, since alliance can give you lineage points. Alliance and coalition initiated by you gives you lineage points. So this is actually quite tricky because there's not a lot of factions left, and you might want to consider liberating maybe a few vassals and try to build a coalition or alliance with them instead, just so they can give you lineage points. And the new thing here is we have the Captain Armory, which uses lineage points to upgrade your captain retinues, and that's really where Yuan Shao is going to get his late game power spike now, rather than the early game power spike from these captain retinues that you can pick up. He still has his traditional 2 unique unit, Warrior of Ye, as well as the Defender of Hebei. But if you purchase the DLC, you'll actually receive 5 more new unique units. 4 of them are technically faction unique, you can recruit right away. 1 is linked to the Northern Army, which is something you can get once Yuan Shao reach the rank of 7. And his unique building is the Administrative Office building that replaces the traditional one, and it gives you lineage. That's the key point of this building. And of course, Captain Armory is a new feature. Some of the new characters we have is our favorite son, Yuan Shao, Zhang He, Yan Liang, and Wen Chou. And everything else is still largely the same. We still have the new change where we have longer reinforcement range. This is probably something you might want to take advantage of, because there's a few mechanics among the family members that require multiple generals on the battlefield at the same time. So you're still trying to play a style where you're trying to mass armies and fight together. Yuan Shao is still the same commander with the same traits. Everything else is pretty much the same. A lot of starting rank for polearm infantry, and we do have quite a few of them in our unique units, so that will definitely be helpful, as well as the recruitment cost discount. Now, if we take a look at the map, you can see that we start out in the north. There's only one real enemy in the north, and that is Zhang Yan. He starts out with 1 county. Fairly easy for the player to take out in the beginning, so you don't have to worry about him at all. You probably want to get rid of him pretty fast just to make sure there's no threat behind, and after that you can focus on Cao Cao, which is this pink color here. You have 2 allies in Liu Bei and Gongdu, and I believe they will give you lineage points. I believe it's set up that they are alliances that you have initiated. If not, hopefully that's something they will patch up. We'll take a look once we jump in. And the main goal of this campaign is to take out Cao Cao early on, which should net you the Emperor, and the rest of the way should be pretty easy. So I totally agree with the easy situation here, and let's hop into game and take a look at turn 1.
启禀主公，河北百姓 无不奉您为主，但在河对岸，还有一贼子妄图挑战您的威严，曹操。他的领土广阔，兵力雄厚，人才济济，连天子也被他挟持借势。但您不必独自面对如此强敌，南方也有数股势力愿意与您联手抗曹，其中以刘关张三人最为出色，或许能派人游说他们永远加入您的麾下。但在此之前，主公还有内务需要处置，您的子嗣正为了继承权争斗不休，此事一刻不盖棺定论，便一刻不得安宁。此外，您已将西边的张燕撵出黑山，但需在他重新集聚一群神出鬼没的贼寇之前，斩尽杀绝。主公乃元氏之龙，龙吟之声可定天下之乱。纵观宇内，唯有您才能治乱安危。
Alrighty, so that was the flyby, and we'll take a look at our starting situation, the storm in the north. Cao Cao must be brought to justice. No longer shall he hold the emperor as a hostage. He is nothing more than a tyrant before him, and will be brought low. You have strong forces, powerful allies, and a large estate. There is nothing, no one, who can challenge you now. Grind Cao Cao into the dust. Zhang Yan is a threat from within, it must be defeated. You must keep your officers loyal or they will defect. So this is a warning for Zhang He situation here. Now, we're not really here to play the turn, we're here to set up the beginning, talk about how he got here and so forth, introduce some of the generic characters and as well as some of the legendary ones because they're relatively new. Our mission's the same exact mission as Cao Cao in the beginning, but instead of capturing Henei's Zhao Ge, we have it, and we want to capture Dong's Poyang, so that's the opposite side of this mission. And we have thinning the herd, defeat 5 armies or garrisons from Cao Cao, so it's very mirrored, the foil of each other here. And our first battle with Yuan Shao himself is against Yu Jin's army over here with Cheng Yu. And it's a fairly easy one. You have probably the best force in the game at the start, and you can easily use this army to crush that. Because Yuan Shao, to start with, it's pretty strong already. He has one of the best armors in the game at 70. And he doesn't have a good weapon, which is a shame. But he did pick up a new skill. So this is new here. He also got the familiar conflict skill, which means as long as there's another unit with this skill on the map, then both of them will get 50% boost to all their damage, melee charge, and melee attack rate, and plus 5 morale. So who else has this? Yuan Tan has this, and Yuan Shang has this. So the 3 Yuan family members, as long as 2 of them are on the battlefield, both will receive this bonus. So this is quite good. You have obviously your son nearby. The goal here is to fight together. They don't have to be in the same army. You can take advantage of the 50% reinforcement range increase that you get from your background so that you can fight together. Aside from that, the skill tree is alright. The way it's leveled up, it's not too bad, especially since you do start with your unique skill. Ideally, you probably want flexibility and understanding, but it's not like we don't want zeal and intensity. So we'll probably work our way over there. Probably flexibility first for that redeployment discount. And then night battle is also pretty useful, assuming our strategist, Zhu Shuo, doesn't have it. He does not. His skill tree is alright as well. You're going to work your way up over here, of course. And we'll talk about everyone real soon. But first, just looking at the start, that's our first battle. Like I said, because all the characters require lineage to recruit, it's better if we try to capture enemy generals. So whenever you have a chance to fight, win, with decisive victories, get those captured, get a shaman item if you can, and try to recruit them into your force without spending lineage points. Because the newest thing is this Captain Armory. which would be great for upgrading your captain units, captain retinues. And the first thing you should really remember to do is activate your mission always on turn 1 right away, because these cost no lineage, and you can start stacking the wins and the kills on your retinues so that you can have these passive discounts as well as lineage points added to you throughout the game. So that's one thing you must do. And then some of the upgrades, I would say just save them. The tier 1 upgrades aren't really worth it. You don't unlock the higher tier until you get more lineage. So the ideal situation here is to just wait for a while. Some of the good ones are obviously these more universal bonuses. I think these are just applied to all your captain retinues, where these are more individual. So obviously these would be worth more, and also probably the ones you want to go for, like replenishment in enemy territory. Obviously Whitewater, super strong here. Every captain unit becomes, the captain unit in the army becomes a Sima pretty much. And you have Unbreakable as well. And then 3 extra army. I think these are the ones you can only get like once. So once you get it, all your units would have it, the diamond shaped ones. And this means once you get it once, you get 3 armies added to your army limit. That's it. You unlock formations, I guess, for all your captain retinues with this upgrade. So it's not like I have to spend 300 for each of them. It's more like this is applied universally to all of them, which is rather nice. Only makes them stronger. And then we can take a book from Zhang Yan's faction and be able to ambush on offense. So saving those lineage to unlock these higher tier ones where we can get better things. And elsewhere, you can take a look at the map in terms of ownership. You see that we have, we already have that ownership. We have not much land under our name. Zhang Yan's going to get wiped fairly early. You probably want to use your son to move closer. I think no one can actually reach him on turn 1, which is rather annoying. There is probably a way, because you can recruit units on turn 1, where you can actually get this fight if you want. What you would do is you would recruit generals from your pool and use the proxy trick to move them. Wait, why can't we summon them onto the field? Maximum number of army. So we would need to get rid of 1 army. Wow, only 3 army slots. That is very tight. But we can increase that with administrators. Right, just 1 administrator. But once we use that one, assign someone, you would actually have an extra army slot. And what you would do is just recruit 1 general, and then recruit a second one, recall the first one, proxy that location up, and then do the trick again with a 3rd general, and then use that 3rd general to launch the attack. Remember the 50% reinforcement range, just march him closer, or even march him closer, and then you could take out Zhang Yan on turn 1, and that way you don't have to worry about him ever again. In case you're worried that he escapes, use the general to attack the city, and just put the army in the reinforcement range, drag him in. Fairly easy fight early on, just to wipe them out. And then you don't have to worry about bandits again. And then over here, you're going to probably see your vassal lose some land. I don't know how the AI Xiaohodun will behave, but his units are definitely better quality compared to theirs. Hopefully they will not cause too much trouble. I think the main issue with having so much vassal around is that you can't really, control them efficiently. But it does mean you end up fielding more armies in more places. So hopefully, if anything, they can slow down Xiaohodun. And if they lose Taiyuan to him, you can take it back and keep it for yourself, because it's a wonderful commander. You don't have a lot of good commanders nearby. And aside from that, we have our middle son, the forgotten one, Yuan Shao over here in the north. He has some good territory in my opinion, right? He has Dai's horse pasture, which is great for reducing the cost of your cavalry units. And then he has Youbei which has a component that can make it pretty nice with the trade port. But unfortunately it's being held by Gongsun Du. So eventually maybe a northern campaign is needed, but right now he seems passive enough. And then you have your unfavored son, your eldest son, Yuan Tan, spread out in the Qing province. He is probably the most capable one here out of your sons, given that his territory is pretty large and pretty wealthy. So I'm thinking he will probably recruit the most units, and he also doesn't have a lot of threats nearby. He can link up with Liu Bei preferably early on, and maybe they can do something over here. And your job is just to hold back Cao Cao's advance. Cao Cao has a full stack here from what we know from playing Cao Cao's side of this matchup. Cao Ren's over here. So ideally, after you cross over and maybe take care of Poyang over here, you would team up with your son and perhaps Zheng He, who should wipe this out on turn 1. He should probably move down, and then you guys can probably group up and take out Cao Cao from the northern side. He Dong is also very valuable, so if you can take care of the north coast of the Yellow River, the rest of the campaign should be fairly simple. I don't imagine that AI Cao Cao can do well against you. So once the north is secured and you can move on the Emperor, do that as soon as possible. The new Emperor mechanic is really quite useful. You have to manage this well because you will be in a war with Han factions, namely Cao Cao, who has the Emperor. So if you could actually like lower him and maintain yourself, because if you think about it, there's a cooldown on both, I think 5 turns. So if you use both, then you're netting 15 points and spending 15 points, and you end up just dropping Cao Cao's points down by 15, which might be worth it. If you make him hurt and make him lose the Emperor, it could really come in handy for you, or else he's going to use that to his advantage. Alright, so that's pretty much your starting situation in terms of the battle. Your cities are not the greatest. Bohai is where you were sent by Dong Zhuo very early on, pretty much to live under house arrest. Han Fu was also assigned by Dong Zhuo here as the governor, and pretty much he was supposed to be your babysitter. It didn't turn out that way. You were able to get yourself away from Han Fu's control and even convinced him to join the coalition against Dong Zhuo, so that worked in your favor. And eventually you used the trick to get Gong Sun to attack Han Fu, making Han Fu surrender to you. And that helped you get the control of the Ji province, which is your main source of power. And then eventually defeating Gong Sun got you the Yu province in the north, and then the Bin province to the west after you defeated Zhang Yan, or pushed him back at the very least. He was never really defeated, he just went back into the mountains. He still had lots of followers, and eventually he would join Cao Cao. And then your oldest son, despite not liking him, was quite capable as he conquered the rest of the Qing province, and that's how you end up with 4 provinces and hundreds of thousands of men. Yuan Shao was really strong at this time, and he basically made the decision to attack Cao Cao because he knew he outnumbered him by a bunch. And if he wins, takes the Emperor, I think the whole map is set up to fall the way that Yuan Shao would want. But unfortunately, Guanzhou didn't go his way to a variety of reasons, and we'll talk about some of those reasons as we introduce his characters. So we kind of know the family already. We talked about how the kid also has this ability and he starts with it. So unlike Cao Cao's faction, where many of the character has terrible skill trees, I would say that Yuan Shao's skill trees are pretty nicely set up in the 200 start. Yuan Shao was a beautiful child. I guess vain would be a good word here, but he was also sickly. I'm not sure if he was a sickly one or there's like a 4th son in romance that was sickly, a very young 4th son, but I think it would be him historically because I don't think a 4th son existed. He would be the youngest one. And he was not officially made heir, right? Historically, he was not officially made heir, but he was definitely favored by Yuan Shao. What happened was Yuan Shao died of sickness, and in 203, a couple years after losing at Guandu, and he didn't leave a will. And his strategists, the ones that favored Yuan Shao, changed his will to give it to the younger son, because they were afraid, because no will was left, that it would naturally go to Yuan Tan. And since they openly supported Yuan Shao during the period where they're vying for the heir, that they would get punished. So they changed the will, or invented this will, to make him the next heir. And those strategists would be Pang Ji and Shen Pei. These two supported Yuan Shao. And that's going to be a trend. You're going to see a lot of strategists for Yuan Shao's faction, and they're going to split off and support different people. For example, like Xingping here, and where's Guo Tu? Guo Tu, these two supported Yuan Tan. And honestly, Guo Tu is probably the worst here. Oh, he's level 5. Wow, that's okay. Erratic Advisor. So his bonus is not terrible, but if I have to describe who the worst advisor in Yuan Shao's faction is basically Guo Tu. if he had done everything opposite of what Guo Tu suggested, he would have been better off, right? And Guo Tu ended up being the one who convinced Yuan Tan to fight his brother, right? So after Yuan Shao's death, the brothers split the forces and the land, and they were still individually probably as strong as Cao Cao. And when Cao Cao tried to attack, they would work together and Cao Cao can't win. But Yuan Tan got convinced by these strategists here to attack Yuan Shao, who was ready-made, the heir and leader, was official. And after he attacked him, they couldn't win. They got chased back. They got chased back into the Qing province. Then Xingping had the brilliant idea of, let's go to Cao Cao and ask for help against our brother. And he sent his own brother. Xingping had a younger brother, Xin Pei, I believe was his name, to go talk to Cao Cao. And when Xin Pei went to Cao Cao, Xin Pei flipped. He switched sides. He told Cao Cao what's going on and told Cao Cao that Yuan Shang's armies are away from Ye and chasing Yuan Tan into the Qing province. And he recommended Cao Cao to launch an attack against Ye. And Cao Cao definitely did that, free land. And that wrecked the Yuan's defense, Yuan Shang and Yuan Tan's defense, and kind of ruined them. And Yuan Tan was eventually forced to just surrender to Cao Cao. And later on, Cao Cao changed his mind and executed Yuan Tan. So Yuan Shang and Yuan Xi escaped way north. They tried to escape towards Gong Sun Du's son, Gong Sun Kang, because Gong Sun Du would die of old age very soon. And Gong Sun Kang would execute them, give their head over to Cao Cao, be like, I'm a good boy, don't take my land up north. And that's the end of the Yuan brothers. Not a very happy ending, thanks to these terrible strategists. And speaking of terrible strategists, there's a couple good ones here. We have Tian Feng, right? Historically, he's probably more well-known. Forthright advisor. I think this is a fitting title. This is a good one. I think this is a new one, too. I don't think he was in the game with this title before. 40 points, too. So Tian Feng's role in this is that Tian Feng is a local in Bohai. He didn't work under Yuan Shao in the early stages. He worked under Han Fu, who was in this region. And when Han Fu surrendered to, joined, let's call it joined, he wasn't getting attacked by Yuan Shao. He was attacked by Gong Sun Zan because Yuan Shao tricked Gong Sun Zan thinking that he will attack them. So imagine Germany writing to USSR says, let's split Poland. And then you don't actually attack Poland, you let USSR attack Poland, tricking Poland to surrendering into Germany. That's kind of the maneuver that Yuan Shao pulled there. And it's not Yuan Shao being smart pulling that one. That was Peng Ji's plan. So these strategists, individually are smart guys, right? These are all talented advisors. You put them all together trying to vie for favors, you get devil's advocates and just terrible plans all over the place. And Yuan Shao is just bombarded by different plans that all kind of sound good on paper, and it's now your job to pick. Then why do you have so many strategists? That's the big problem here. But Tian Feng at the time, after Han Fu joined, was asked by Yuan Shao to join because he was pretty well known. And he gave a lot of good advice. Some of the advice are, let's go get the emperor early. Yuan Shao didn't do that. When Cao Cao went to go attack Liu Bei, which is during this period, the early stages of 200, late 199, Tian Feng said Cao Cao needs most of his men to go fight Liu Bei. Therefore, Xuchang, which should be here actually, where the emperor is, must be empty. We should go attack now. And then in romance, the reason why is because Yuan Shang's youngest son was sick. That was the moment where he says, no, I'm not going to attack now. But I think historically it was for other reasons. It wasn't because, the fictional fourth son was sick, right? That's not a good reason. But basically Yuan Shao refused. And after Liu Bei suddenly, lost within about a month or two, really sudden collapse. I mean, it was not fair. He just stole it and then couldn't defend it. Not a surprise. Liu Bei fled and joined Yuan Shao. And then Yuan Shao suddenly gets convinced by other strategists that now is time for war. And this moment, Tian Feng's like, your opportunity is over. Cao Cao was there, away, and you didn't attack, and now he won and came back, and you want to attack now? Terrible idea. Well, Tian Feng goes into prison as the rest of the army marches out. And when Yuan Shao loses Guandu and comes back, Tian Feng kind of knew he was screwed because he knew that Yuan Shao is not the type to kind of say, I'm wrong, I'm sorry, and get him back. Yuan Shao is more the type that can't face you because he would just think about, I told you though. So Dianfeng got executed. Not a great end for him, but pretty good strategist. Xing Ping, we already kind of talked about his brother's role. So what happened with him after his brother flip was that he was defending Ye at the time when Cao Cao surrounded it. And his brother came out and said, you should surrender too, brother. And then when his brother said that, Shen Pei, who was also in charge of the defense, went to his whole family and murdered them all because now he realized who betrayed them. So not a good ending for him. Pang Ji. So Pang Ji's story is not terrible. Like, he has good plans. We're talking about good plans. Right? He's the one who came up with ideas like, let's trick Gong Senzan into attacking Han Fu, and then we'll get Han Fu to surrender. So he had good plans like that. But, they played sides, and that really got people in trouble. Shen Pei was also on the side of Yuan Shao, which is fine. You basically are on the side of your leader. If Yuan Shao liked him, you are on his side. Nothing wrong with that. Just goes against Confucian tradition of, oldest son. But Shen Pei's biggest role in romance and in history is that during the Battle of Guandu, he didn't go. He was in charge of defending Ye. And when he's guarding Ye, Xu You, who everyone knows, everyone's complaining, why is Zhang He the betrayer in the trailer and not Xu You? Well, Xu You had family members that broke the law, and they got caught and trialed by Shen Pei, who imprisoned them. And that made Xu You flip sides. So Shen Pei caused Xu You to turn to Cao Cao, and Xu You told Cao Cao where Yuan Shao was moving his food supplies. And when Wu Chao got burned down, Yuan Shao's morale just collapsed. So Xu You was the turning tide of the entire campaign here, a turning point of the entire campaign here. And the reason why he turned was because Shen Pei imprisoned his family. And since we're on the topic of Xu You joined Yuan Shao very early. I think Xu You and Pang Ji were the only two people with him when Yuan Shao first left the capital under Dong Zhuo to go to Bohai in the first place. Xu You comes from a pretty good clan, went to school in the capital, knew Yuan Shao personally from school, also knew Cao Cao. That's why he's close to Cao Cao. That's why he felt good, surrendering to Cao Cao. He knew Cao Cao would accept him. But because he felt so close with Cao Cao, and because he felt that I helped you win Guandu, he started acting really big and eventually got him killed under Cao Cao. Cao Cao was not very open to keeping people with attitudes or people who think, they're hot shots under him alive for long. You can look at Xu You, you can look at Yang Xiu, you can also look at Cui Yan. So Cui Yan right now works under Yuan Shao. So he has a bunch of, characters that doesn't get art right now, but he did get a lot of artwork in this patch, so I understand how a lot of people are left behind. And just a reminder, if the next DLC is the Northern Expansion Pack, which it should be, Expansion Pack do not move dates, right? We get map updates, we get maybe nomadic tribes, definitely nomadic tribe, I think, but we also will get some Han generals, right? When Furious Wild came out, we got 4 Han generals. So there's a chance that when the Northern Expansion come, some of these characters will get art, and we'll probably see them with art before this, 200 start date becomes no longer the newest thing, because even if we get a chapter pack, you'd be still playing it on each of the starting date that existed, including 200. So maybe we'll see some of them being added in then. Like Xu You probably will get art. He's just that important. And then over here, like, I would probably give it to Pang Ji and Shen Pei, because they were just around for a long time. And then if we have to give one to Yuan Tan's side, it's probably Guo Tu, even though I don't want to give it to Guo Tu, just because Guo Tu is just terrible. Just the worst strategist out of this group. And we haven't talked about these two. Chun Yiqiong. Chun Yiqiong was one of the 8 captains of the West Palace alongside Cao Cao and Yuan Shao. If you guys remember the lore series or have seen the lore series, basically Emperor Liu Hong made his private army and assigned 8 captains. Chun Yiqiong was one of them. That's how he knew Yuan Shao and Cao Cao. His major role in Guandu is that he was in charge of transporting the food supplies. So at the time, Cao Cao was out of food. Cao Cao had maybe like less than 3 months of food left, and he couldn't really stay encamped in Guandu for long. But Yuan Shao had a lot of food. Yuan Shao actually organized extra food to come in from north of the river, and Chun Yiqiong was in charge of transporting that food. It's food for 100,000 army, so it's a lot of food gathered up from the north to be transported down, and he was in charge of guarding it. Romance would have him losing the supply depot because he was drunk, but it's really not his fault. Like, he has a very small number of men, and he's in charge of moving this food towards the main camp. He got caught on the way to the main camp. It wasn't like Wuchao was this hidden supply depot. No, it's just a pit stop, and he's made a pit stop there, but Xu Yu knew where the pit stop is, and not only did Xu Yu know where the pit stop is, he went to Cao Cao, and Cao Cao got 3,000 cavalry to dress up as Yuan Shao's men, and had Xu Yu basically give them like code words, and basically the whole way they passed through towards Wuchao, the whole way they just basically meet patrols and keep going, saying that they're Yuan Shao's men who were sent here to reinforce Chun Yiqiong's men. So how is he going to defend against that? And his entire transport guard either got killed or had their nose chopped off, including himself. He got his nose chopped off. He didn't die. And the nose was sent back to Yuan Shao's camp to terrorize them. And he was caught alive, obviously. And after the Battle of Guandu was over and he was brought back to Cao Cao, Cao Cao was his colleague, right? Cao Cao, Yuan Shao, him, they were all part of the 8 captains of the West Palace. Cao Cao wanted to keep him alive and have him work under him. But then Xu Yu reminded Cao Cao that every time he looks in the mirror, he looks at that nose, he knows that Cao Cao did that to him, so that he's gonna, be disloyal or have a chance to be disloyal. So Cao Cao made the decision that we execute him instead. He died there. And that's his story. So I think we talked about everyone. Oh, well, Cui Yan and Ju Shou. Ju Shou's story is very simple. He advised Yuan Shao, don't attack Cao Cao at Guandu. We just fought a 1-year war with Gongsun Zan. Rest, have people farm, just keep maintaining the north, and slowly we'll beat Cao Cao just by being stronger. That was his role. But he wasn't as strong as saying, don't attack now. He just gave that advice. Like, Tianfeng kind of went against, forthright advisor and got himself imprisoned. Cui Yan's not a big player under Yuan Shao. Yuan Shao kept him around because he was famous. The Cui clan, super famous. They're going to be famous from, they're from Qinghe, roughly this area. Their clan, Qinghe Cui Shi, they're famous from the spring-autumn period all the way past the Tang Dynasty. That's insanely long for a clan to be that powerful and famous. And he went under school of a guy named Zheng Xuan, which is a really famous Confucian scholar. Another student of Zheng Xuan later on is Jiang Wei. Zheng Xuan is a traveling scholar, taught people all over the place. He was learning under Zheng Xuan at a young age around Beihai, where Kongrong was. And Kongrong lost the city to Yellow Turbans. So Zheng Xuan and his students had to go run into the mountains to hide away from Yellow Turbans. And that was him. And then when the Yellow Turban threat was cutting off their food, Zheng Xuan basically dispersed his school, says, we can't feed you guys, so you guys go. And he became this wandering scholar for about 4 years until Yuan Shao asked him, come join me, because you're famous from a clan, you have a famous teacher, we could use you. And he gave some good advice. Basically, Yuan Shao's men were looting a lot in this period, and he was saying, you got to control your troops, give your image, try to play the role of a good Han official so the local population could, believe in you, trust in you, and support you. So those are good plans. And after Yuan Shao lost here, he would join Cao Cao, and Cao Cao really liked him too. His niece ended up marrying Cao Zhi, was Cao Zhi's wife. So he also had a pretty high government position. He was Cao Pi's tutor. So he was one of the grand tutor positions. He was in charge of teaching Cao Pi. And later on, he got killed by Cao Cao, though, because Cao Cao was told by someone that he wrote an article that could, if you could misconstrue the meanings of the word, it was talking bad about Cao Cao, and Cao Cao didn't like that, and he got killed for that. But he didn't actually mean it, so tough luck there. He was also known to be really good looking. to the point where after Cao Cao took over the entire north and also beat back the nomadic tribes, the nomadic tribes came in with tribute to gift to Cao Cao, and Cao Cao wanted to play a prank, or wanted to do an experiment there, where he got Cui Yan to dress up as himself and sit on the basically the throne seat in a tent, and then Cao Cao himself dressed up as a guard with a sword and stood next to him, and they took in all the tribute. And then afterwards, Cao Cao got someone to ask all the nomadic chieftains how did they feel about the meeting, and most people said, the prince, Duke of Wei, looked really handsome, and that the guard behind him looked like a hero. So basically, they praised both, and Cao Cao felt really good about that. And you can also kind of tell Cui Yan was very good looking because of that. And that's pretty much all we have here under Yuan Shao. If you want to know, Zhang He was originally a general under Han Fu, joined over afterward. Yan Liang, Wen Chou, Zhang He, and Gao Lan, who is not made in the game, are known as the four pillars of Hebei by later historians. And just because they were known as the most talented four, which I kind of disagree, but that's another story, because all the other ones are not even here. And Zhang He would eventually join Cao Cao. Yan Liang and Wen Chou will both die during this long campaign. So that's pretty much the start. If we take a look at the reform tree, we also start with plenty of reforms since we are in year 200. And the reforms are okay. You still have a little bit of character salary decrease on both sides, not as severe as Cao Cao's case. And you started up this tree, which is not bad, because you end up getting the corruption reduction up here, as well as eventually working towards industry here. You also have the private tutor done, so you could technically rush for Onyx Dragons, which is always a good option. Even with the nerfs, I still think range is good. You do have a few unique units that can kind of replace that role, like the Ye Vanguard Crossbow is really good. And you have also the Ye Vanguard Spearman, which is also really good. Both very solid units that you can use. So maybe you don't need to rush that. Your red tree is also very well developed. If you like the 10% replenishment, it's not too far away. And the rest is decent, I think. You have pretty flexible options. I don't think any of the reform they pick is bad. Maybe this one, but you might need it just because the number of generals again in the late game salary it's gonna hurt. You don't start out very highly ranked. You're only a second marquise because you don't actually hold a lot of actual land. You would like to go tall as Yuan Shao when playing as him, so you should probably get prestige without too much issue. You also want to rank up quick because your captain retinue quality increases based on your rank. You get elite ones at king, so you do want to get prestige. Some of the ways you can do this is just by maybe turning some of your vassal into annex if you want to do that. That's an easy way to gain prestige, or just by taking Cao Cao's land. I think naturally you'll get there. And the great thing about starting low, now that you get prestige points when you rank up, is that you can customize your faction the way you want instead of having it all set up for you already with Cao Cao's start. So that's gonna do it for us. We don't really play the game during these previews, unfortunately, just because it would just get too long to get all the missions out in the first couple turns, because one turn takes a long time just because the theater is so spread out. So we'll just take analysis of our start, talk about our characters, talk about how we ended up here, and we'll move on with other factions. So until then, bye!